Okay, welcome you all. Good morning to students. We'll get started with the session. I'm presenting the slides. Let's take a look at the course overview. I think we're going to be talking about more on the sensors, but before we get into that, let's just quickly take a look at what we have done so far last week. We started by saying applied physics is enabling engineering and technology. We specifically took a look at electrical, electronics, and communication sensors and how applied physics is going to be playing a very important role in designing and implementing and deploying sensors. So that is what we covered mainly in the first session. But then we got into Internet of Things, which is a very hot upcoming field, which is primarily the driver for sensors. A lot of these small devices that are used in industries that are connected to the internet are all going to be sensing something. So the Internet of Things is a very important field for sensors. So we briefly took a look at what are they, why do we need them, and how they are implemented in the industry. Not only the sensors are important in sensing various parameters or attributes, but they also need to communicate whatever it sensed, right? Whether it's a temperature or a pressure or a moisture, motion, whatever it is sensing, it needs to communicate to somebody, whether it's a person or another system or another computer or another device. So communication becomes very important. So we briefly looked at the mobile 5G communication networks, including private networks that are going to be used in manufacturing, in oil fields, mining industry, a lot of these remote areas where you don't have public network, public mobile network, private networks are becoming more and more important. So we took a look at use cases for that. And then last week, we also wrapped up with sensors for industrial IoT. Specifically, we focused on manufacturing, whether it is automobile manufacturing or any other parts manufacturing that is getting automated. The industrial IoT is definitely is going to be used there. So that's where we left off, taking a look at the sensors for the industrial IoT. And basically, we looked at some of these sensors like this, like I think just to refresh your mind, some of the key sensors, or whether it is a water sensor, chemical sensor, a motion detection, a whole bunch of sensors that are used for IoT. Okay, so that is what we talked about. Let me see who is coming in. Okay, so today we'll be taking a look at the part two of industrial IoT, which is just a moment. Yeah, so today's topic is sensors for industrial IoT part two. We'll be specifically taking a look at three areas: smart cities, automobiles, and agriculture. All are very, very important for economy and the overall community as a whole. So we took three of these important fields. So let us take a look at our outline. So we'll briefly take a look at what smart cities mean to us. What are the technologies used in smart cities? And the roles of sensors, right? What type of sensors are used in smart city initiative and deployment? And take a look at some examples. In fact, Government of India has a smart cities initiative. So we'll briefly take a look at their site as well and see what kind of initiative that the government is doing to ensure the cities' assets and resources and devices and systems are connected together, so the sensors can be more effective in a smart city implementation. And then we'll take a look at automobiles. I think we briefly talked about the vehicle communication, but there is a lot more use case in the next generation automobiles and the role of sensors in them. We'll finally wrap it up with agriculture. Just a moment, I think that's the madam coming in. Good morning, madam. So after the automobiles, we'll briefly take a look at modern agriculture, which is an essential market for a country like ours. and how sensors are used in the agriculture, and then we'll open it up to questions and discussions. So today it's all about industrial IoT part 2 for smart cities, automobiles, and agriculture. Okay, so in terms of smart cities, as you can see in the diagram, there are lots of areas where cities resources and assets can be effectively used in a community. So the primary reason for having smart cities is to collect real-time data from the sensors. As you can see, there could be electric cars that could be using the battery stations in our cities. So charging for electric vehicles is certainly one of them. Self-driving cars extending public transport, trams and electric buses may have sensors, and pedestrian signals could be used for better traffic control for bikes and pedestrians. Lots of these buildings these days, you will see they are coming up with solar panels. So you need to sense those as well in terms of those panels are working fine. A bunch of panels are not generating energy, then you need to know. Likewise, the demand-driven traffic signals is another classic example of a smart city implementation where the signals can be a little bit more sensitive to traffic conditions in terms of how many cars are waiting in a particular traffic light, what is the current speed of the vehicles that are on the road. Lots of information that can be sensed in the traffic light scenario, and that can be sent to a centralized server for analysis. And battery research and production facilities. So lots of examples of how in a typical city environment the sensors can be used for better implementation of smart cities. So like I mentioned, the primary objective of smart cities is to collect real-time data from sensors, analyze and manage city assets. So city assets can be like the traffic light, these charging stations and stuff like that I talked about. Resources could be, personnel. It could be the policemen or the emergency personnel, city managers, and the services, whether it is electricity, water, sewage services, garbage services, lots of city initiated services. They need the data to better run the city effectively. So in addition to the usual Internet of Things that we talked about, information and communication technology, I think you will hear this term ICT. IT is information technology, but if you add the communication to that, information and communication becomes important because, like we mentioned, the sensor, they not only sense the data, but it needs to be communicating to something else. So it is a combination of IoT and ICT is what is used in smart cities. And it also reduces the cost, right? For example, whether it is well aligned traffic lights, or traffic production, or detecting a particular solar cell not working, you can save time and money by relying on those sensing data rather than waiting for somebody to go take a look at it. You can do a proactive maintenance. Those are called predictive maintenance. That also reduces the cost of the for the city. So it is very, very important for cities to take a look at the smart cities implementation. And sustainable resources. I think we briefly talked about water and electricity, especially water, right? I think more and more resources are getting consumed, and water is going to become a very scarce commodity very soon. And so all the cities in the globe are taking a look at the efficient utilization of water and conserving water and measuring the water usage, and particularly for leaks in water pipes, in water storage and so on. So it is very important to have a sustainable resource such as water, and of course electricity is important. Clean air, another very good example of a smart city service, essential for the health of the community. I think somebody is at the door. Let me try to bring them in. Okay, so that's a quick overview of all the sensors that could be utilized in a smart cities implementation. And like I mentioned, the role of sensors, there could be electronic sensors. I think we talked about environment surveillance sensors and speedometer sensors, how the traffic is flowing. So those are all electronic sensors. a whole bunch of infrared sensors and radar sensors. And these are used in environment where the environment is hostile. So nobody, human being cannot be close to that environment. So infrared sensors are used in those sensors. Thermal sensors, of course, they are used for energy distribution. You have a transformer. You probably want to measure the temperature of the transformer, right? You don't want that to be overheating and then go bad. So thermal sensors in cities are as important, as well as in power grids, right? Large substations need to be also monitored for accurate temperatures. So make sure that they're not overheating and bring down the grid. So thermal sensors are important there. Proximity and lidar sensors, I think these are something we talked about. I think we'll also cover in our automobile section how proximity, and we briefly touched upon the vehicle communication. So the proximity sensors are also going to play an important role in the smart cities. Just a moment. So in a summary, we have electronic sensors, infrared, thermal, and proximity. These are not just exhaustive list of all the sensors. These are some of the sensors that smart cities are using. There could be more and more sensors that, depending upon the use case, depending upon the need, we might need more sensors. This is just an illustrative example of what we need. Okay. So that's on the role of sensors. I think I mentioned Government of India, we have a smart cities mission. Please go check out their website. They talk about all the cities. I think our cities like Coimbatore is included in this list. The cities can register with the government. There's a lot of help from the federal government and state government in terms of how to make the smart city implementation a reality. What type of support that the cities might need. So I highly recommend you to go check out some of the cities profile and what they are doing in their cities. And specifically, you can take a look at what is happening in our state, in our city, and there's a lot of information out there. So I just threw in the website for that mission from Government of India. Now, in the smart cities, I think we also you can imagine the waste management, whether it is compost waste or water waste, energy fuel waste. A lot of that is part of that, and a lot of the e-governance and city service. I mean, this chart directly comes from the smart cities implementation that is planned in our country. Smart meters management, I think we briefly covered them. So these are some of the examples of smart solutions. So lots of people are working in this area. So if you are, coming out with masters in physics, you want to get into smart cities solutions. These are great areas to look into, whether it is on the sensor implementation or taking the whatever it is sensor and communicating to the rest of the system. Whether it is intelligent traffic management or telemedicine, teleeducation, lots of use cases for smart cities that the government has come up with. And I think there is a lot of information on how they are training the sector, whether it is education sector, private sector, public sector, resources that they need to be trained on the objective of smart cities and the technologies used and what type of resources that we need, what type of funding that we need. A lot of that information is available in the website. So please do take a look at them and to get an idea of why smart cities are becoming more and more important for country like us. Okay, so that's on that. And the next area that we will be taking a look at is automobiles. I think briefly we covered the vehicle-to-vehicle communication. As let's go through each one of them. I think the fleet management, tracking trucks, their location, their weight. This is a very active area of research as well. As the trucks, go from place A to place B, one needs to be the fleet company that is exporting these goods. They need to manage the fleets. They need to understand where the current truck is. So GPS is definitely used, just like how we use location services on our phone. We know that all of our mobile phones has a GPS sensor in there. So like that, there are location sensors. In addition to that, you also have weight sensors. You want to make sure that the truck is not carrying more than what it is supposed to carry, and the speed control. Right, a lot of the times you want to make sure that the truck is moving safely. So the speedometer in the truck, that needs to be sensed and make sure that that is collected, and also fuel, like how it is running on fuel mileage, whether there is any theft that is going on there. So there's a lot of information that is happening in the fleet management. Sensors are heavily used. Lots of sensors are used in those use cases, and all of them need to be collected and then transmitted to the fleet manager, who will be managing the proper operation of fleets, so that can notify. For example, in fact, I was working with a company in Dubai that is primarily looking for a completely automated fleet management. They run a rental car, rental truck business, and so they want to make sure that their drivers are properly using the vehicle. In fact, they do have cameras as well as other sensors to make sure that both the truck and the driver are safe, and they are properly running at the right speed, the right with the right weight, and the location they are going to the right place. So a lot of information needs to be collected, and then that needs to be sent to the fleet manager, who could be on a mobile phone, or on a big screen display where they can monitor, hundreds of these trucks going across the country. So a lot of sensors are getting used in those in that fleet management. So it's a very active area, and there is a lot of industry. There are a lot of companies who are involved in it, and certainly applied physics and scientists are going to be needed in coming up with more innovative ways of building these sensors and bringing them to the market. Connected cars, I think we talked about briefly. Vehicle to vehicle is one of them, but not only vehicle to vehicle, but vehicle to infrastructure. So, for example, the cars could be talking to a traffic light, right? So for example, somebody is really speeding, or there is a thief that has taken the car and they are going on a chase, and so the cars can shut down all the traffic light on the other side, so they can prevent accidents. So there's a lot of use cases for vehicle to traffic light communication, and to pedestrians. So for example, if the car is very close to a pedestrian, it can alert the pedestrian, or it can stop the vehicle and to the network. So there's many use cases where sensors in the automobile can really save lives, can make the traffic much more smoother in a city. So this is another active area of research, and lots of companies are involved in this one. Then the third one is maintenance, right? If you own a car, you know how hard it is to maintain the car, right? You need to make sure that the fluids are properly maintained, your tires are in good condition, your engines is running fine, your alternator is running fine. So a lot of engine parts inside the car these days have sensors, like we talked about in the earlier sessions. Gone are the days where it is just mechanical and electrical. Now it is filled with computers and chips and sensors in your modern cars. They're all there for a reason, right? They can alert the owner of the car that it is time for an oil change. It is time to change your brake pads. It is time to change your tires. Your tire pressure is running low. So a lot of these mechanical things that we used to do before IoT, all of them are now getting automated. So you could get in your phone or in your car dashboard some sensors telling you that it is time to maintain the car, or it can keep track of how many kilometers that you have driven the vehicle, and depending upon the manufacturer's advice, suggestions. It can come back and tell you it is time to change your engine or change your alternator, whatever it is that you're supposed to do. Spark plug, there are millions of parts inside the car, and a lot of any one of them can go bad. And so the predictive analytics and maintenance alerts, this is a huge market. I mean, companies like Maruti Suzuki and many other car companies, they are heavily investing in this space. So if you are interested in sensors for automobile, this could be a great area. I think we briefly touched upon the autonomous vehicles. I think this is the future. The self-parking cars are already here, and self-driving cars are also coming, right? I feel I mean, this is a classic example of sensor fusion. When you need to get multiple sensors, whether it's a camera, whether it is a proximity sensor, whether it is a temperature sensor. A lot of the sensors in your car needs to be coordinated nicely so that it is able to drive safely on the road. So it needs to have intelligence, it needs to have machine learning algorithms. Lots of information has to be processed within the vehicle itself. So this is a very important area that sensors play a very important moment. I think somebody is boy, it's not letting me proceed. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. Lots of people are joining in very, very late. Okay, hope that stops. Okay, the last use case for the automobiles is in-vehicle infotainment and telematics. So this is becoming another upcoming area where your car can send a lot of information to your mobile phone. You can monitor your car remotely. Let's say you parked your car in a mall, and then you want to monitor that nobody is breaking into your car. So it can send cameras. There are cameras all over inside the car as well as in the parking lot. So the car can assimilate a lot of that information and send you to your so you can look at it from your mobile phone whether your car is safe, whether it is still there to begin with, and what is the condition of the car and so on. So just a moment. Okay, so that's on the in-vehicle infotainment. I've seen companies who are coming up with solutions where the sensors in the cars can detect some unusual behavior around the car, and that can be transmitted to the owner of the car or whoever is subscribing to that. So as you can see, this is a huge area where sensors can play a very vital role in the automobile industry, whether it is in fleet management or connected cars, your own personal car maintenance, and for security. So that's on automobiles. The last field is agriculture. Let me see. I think there's some more people. Okay. But last but not least is which is another area that is getting help from the technology. And as we know, the largest industry we have is agriculture, and a lot of emphasis from the government as well as from the companies how IoT modern agriculture. So there are 5 ways that it can help. First of all, it can get tons of data collected by smart agriculture sensors, like we talked about weather conditions, what is the wind speed right now, soil quality, crop growth. A lot of that information can be collected, and that can be very useful for the farmers. Better control over the internal processes. I mean, all of these information needs to be part of a big system where either the farmer or whoever is in charge of the agricultural area in a city or in a village, they need to have a good internal process to make sure that there are no production risks. Right. For example, if a particular paddy field is not producing enough grains, then one needs to understand why it is happening. It can certainly help them. Cost management and waste. I think we talked about it. For example, there are water pipes going all over the paddy field that can be monitored. Maybe there are animals who could come and mess up the water pipes, or they could have other sensors as well. So you need to keep track of the wastage of water, primarily water, and look for leaks in the pipes, and that results in increased production, right? It not only improves our cost, but also it increases the production of the crops. Increase business efficiency. I think we talked about what right now, whatever happens in manual, all of them can be now processed through automation. Just a moment. Okay. So that's on the smart IoT. And then in terms of specific example for the sensors, you would have heard about drones. They're quite heavily used in agriculture. And the idea behind there is to image of the crops and the crop monitoring and detecting any nutrient deficiencies, right? I think those are all important things that one cannot visualize from going place. So the drones are heavily utilized in there. The drones have lots of sensors in them to make sure that it sends the data to a centralized a computer that can analyze that. So the drones-based sensors are heavily used. The other one is grain bin monitoring. So this is basically, what is the level of content. Right? Okay. So basically, you need to measure the moisture content in the grains such as corn. So basically, they can farmers can benefit from this type of monitoring. So they have a better idea of how the crops are growing, and so they can make sure that there are no loss in productivity in that scenario. Last but not least is the water level management. I think we talked about water leak is a major issue in agriculture. So measuring the liquid sensors, the moisture sensors, and the water pressure sensors. Those are all great sensors that one would deploy in agriculture industry to make sure that we can monitor over a period of time how the water level has either degraded or remained the same, or it has improved. So a lot of that information is going to be very very relevant for the farmers as well. So I think those are some of. Hope that gives you an idea of the type of sensors that are used in agriculture. Like I said, this is not the only type of sensor. There are lots of other sensors that could be used, but hopefully that gives you an idea of what they are. We pause here. See, I think there are more people coming in. Okay, so that concludes my first session number 4. So just to recap, we talked about 3 areas for industrial IoT: smart cities, automobile, and agriculture. And in each one of them, what type of sensors are used and why they are used and how they are used, how the industry benefits from it, from the smart cities, and from automobile, like we also talked about the government initiative, as well as automobile is a big industry. I think Chennai, we have lots of automobile manufacturing plants like Ford and others. So I'm sure that there are lots of needs for sensors in those factories as well. So clearly, important area. And then last but not least is the agriculture, which every one of our agricultural field would require for better management of crops and better productivity and reducing theft. And there are many use cases in agriculture for that as well. Okay, so let me pause here, see if you have any questions on what we talked about. Okay, any questions from students on what we just talked about? You can also put it in chat window if you cannot talk, but you can always ask a question in the chat window. That's fine as well.
Sir, one doubt, sir.
Go ahead, Rohan.
Sir, whether it's affordable for lower class people, sir? Sensor made things are affordable.
When you say we are talking about industrial IoT, so these are so far we have covered sensor that is used in industry, whether it is manufacturing industry or a car industry. In the next session, we'll talk about home. So in our home, what sensors are used? Of course, depending upon the use case, these sensors could be less expensive. Some of them could be more expensive. So it really depends on the use case. I mean, these days cameras are becoming not that expensive. You can get a very cheap camera now on Flipkart or Amazon. You can install it in your home. So some of the sensors are very affordable. Some sensors could be costly. So it depends upon the use case, Guhan. But so far we have covered the industry side. The sensors, though they are expensive, they are worth it because the companies will make more money. So in fact, it is beneficial for them to have these sensors so they can increase the revenue and the profit.
Sir, what type of sensors is used in poultry farming, sir?
Mainly for, I mean, the typical things are temperature. I've seen in those farms where you want to maintain that the animals are at the right temperature, depending upon whether it is very hot, humid conditions. Moisture is another sensor that I've seen. Wind can be another sensor. So anything related to weather could be a good use case for poultry farms. And the other one, if you have a good camera, I mean, this technology is now upcoming where it can count. Let's say if you have a chicken farm or a cow farm, it can also count the number of animals in the farm. I believe that's what you meant, right? The type of chicken farm or a cow farm. Is that what your question was, Guhan?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other one is there are the animals these days. You can have a tag, so you can also track through wireless sensors. So they can. It's almost like a mini chip on in the sensor that can sense a location. You want to know where all of your animals are, and so they can even give you in a map where your animals are. You can even track them. So tracking them from location point of view, tracking them from the number of animals is certainly an important one. So these are some of the things that I've seen in the farmhouses or the farmlands, especially to track animals.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sure. No, great question. I think these are very useful sensors, and especially if you have a large farm where you have lots of animals, tracking them could be a challenge, and it could save time and money, and you want to make sure that your animal is safe. So plenty of use cases there.
Okay, sir.
Any other questions on the industrial IoT sensors? The next session we'll talk about how homes are getting equipped with IoT and sensors. In fact, I'll give you a live demonstration of what happens at my home here. So I think that'll be an interesting one to take a look at as well. But we will share what is happening in the modern homes when they are building in cities, how they are equipped with IoT devices and sensors. But now we can entertain any questions on the industrial IoT sensors. Okay, if there are no questions, then we'll take 10 minutes break as usual. We'll join in about 10 minutes, and we will take a look at the consumer IoT, that is what is happening in our homes, and how our small businesses, homes and small businesses, your shops, what can you do with sensors, and how they can either the home or the other small businesses. So that's what we will take a look at in the upcoming session. So we'll take a 10-minute break and then we will rejoin. I'll leave the meeting open. So we'll talk to you soon in about 10 minutes from now.